Welcome to episode 8. I'm your host, Anish Patel, and this is 5 for Podcasting. As always, big thank you to everybody who's followed the podcast, who's listened to the podcast, subscribed. Um, uh, we are available everywhere where podcasts are available: Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify Podcast. Um, Big thank you to everybody who's followed on social media. If you haven't already, you can follow on Instagram and Twitter. The handle is at 5 for podcasting. And that's the same for Instagram and Twitter. Or you can follow myself on Twitter at avpatel730. Um, be sure to follow so you don't miss out on any updates about the podcast, when new episodes are released, etc. Um, we took a week off last week for the long. It was Labor Day, so decided to just take the week off, take a little break, kind of refresh a little bit. Back this week, should be back to a regular schedule now moving forward, um, and we'll go from there. Uh, Big week though, big couple of weeks, I should say. We had NFL come back last week. NHL playoffs are chugging along, as well as the NBA playoffs. So a lot to discuss on this week's pod, especially after being off last week. So first, want to get into the NFL. It's great to have the NFL back. I mean, this is what me as a fan I've been waiting for since the Super Bowl. Uh, and week one didn't disappoint. We had some good games. We had some blowouts. We had Tom Brady's debut in Tampa. We had the Chiefs starting their defense of their Super Bowl championship on Thursday night. We had Baltimore bouncing back after their early exit in the playoffs last year. We had the Rams opening up their stadium. So we had a lot of good storylines um, in the first week of the NFL. Uh, First thing I want to talk about is the Chiefs. They opened up playing against the Texans, and they picked up right where they left off. I mean, their offense is clicking still. They brought back 20 of 22 starters on both sides of the ball. Um, they signed Mahomes and Kelsey to extensions in the offseason, and they're chugging along. They look like they're poised to not only make a deep run in the playoffs, but potentially repeat as Super Bowl champs. So that'll be fun to watch. Now I know with the Texans, a lot of people, for some reason, I read a lot of articles about people picking their picks for who's going to win the division and whatnot, and a lot of people had the Texans winning the AFC South. And I'm convinced that the people that made those picks just don't watch the AFC South, because the Texans obviously got rid of DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason. They picked up David Johnson, but anybody who watched any of the Texans games knows that DeAndre Hopkins is the reason that offense ran the way it did. That's no knock against Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson is a great quarterback. I think he's an up and coming quarterback. I think he's going to be awesome in the league, and he's going to keep that team in a lot of games. But when you lose a receiver like DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best receivers in the league, in my opinion, that's not going to help you move forward and beat teams like the Chiefs, like the Ravens, like the Steelers, especially in the AFC. So, after when they traded him away for David Johnson, it just didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense at all. So, and the Chiefs kind of exposed them in that. I know David Johnson had a touchdown early in the game, but once the Chiefs started, clicking and scoring, that game was over. And without a guy like DeAndre Hopkins for the Texans, they just couldn't mount anything until late in the game. And by that time, the game was already over. So, and then moving on to Sunday, we had Tom Brady's debut in Tampa. Didn't go so well. I mean, definitely there wasn't a lot of chemistry built yet. Obviously, that's partly due to COVID because no preseason games, limited practices. They haven't had time to really practice together. Him and the receivers. So that just could be that. But Tampa didn't look good at all. They struggled. They couldn't get the ball moving. Tom Brady, he's 43 years old, and obviously he can't make some of the deep throws anymore. The smarts are still there. He still knows what plays to make, what the right play is. But the issue is he's not at a point in his career where he wants to take hits anymore. So if he feels any sort of pressure in the pocket, he's just going to get rid of the ball. Um, you know, old Tom Brady, 2007 Tom Brady, 2008 Tom Brady, he would sit in the pocket, step up, and make a throw, regardless of getting hit or not. And that's just not there anymore. And I think with a team like Tampa, with the offensive weapons that they have, obviously they have great receivers. They can create space, they can get open. But if Tom Brady's getting any sort of pressure, he's going to throw the ball away. He's not even going to look at the receivers. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think it'll turn around for them as games go on, as weeks go on, just because the chemistry will build, the timing will build, all that stuff will get better only with time. So we'll see how that all plays out. Um, you know, moving over to the AFC, talk about the AFC a little bit. We had the Baltimore Ravens bounce back week one against the Browns after an early disappointing playoff exit last year. They just dominated the Browns. I mean, no better way to say it. They came out, they know what their identity is, they stuck with it, and they just flat out dominated. Browns once again seem to disappoint in the opening game. I saw a stat. What was it? I think it was like 0-16 in season openers. I think it was. So it's a long streak, that's for sure. Um, you know, will the Browns be able to turn around? I don't know. That division is only getting better. Ben Roethlisberger's back. He looked good on Monday night. The Steelers look good on Monday night. The Ravens are obviously the favorite to win that division. Bengals, they look good with Joe Burrow. I know they lost that game late, but Joe Burrow looks like he's the real deal. So that division's only getting tougher, and Cleveland doesn't look like they're getting any better, especially from last year. So that'll be interesting to watch as the season plays out. And then the Sunday night game, we had the Rams opening up their new stadium in Los Angeles, albeit with no fans. But they played against the Cowboys. Cowboys were favored in that game, and the Rams just straight took it to them. I mean, they got back to their identity, which was running the ball, and by running the ball, they were able to create space to open up the passing game a little bit. And that's really the Rams' identity. Defensively, they were able to keep Dallas to 17 points. I know Dallas was projected to be this high-powered offense. With all the weapons that they have, with Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Zeke, they picked up CeeDee Lamb in the draft. Um, Blake Jarwin, supposed to be an up-and-coming tight end. Unfortunately, he got injured and is out for the season. But they were supposed to be this high-powered offense. And the Rams kept them in check pretty much all game. I think the Rams, in my opinion, are actually a sleeper to make the playoffs. Not necessarily a sleeper, but I think they're uh I think they're a dark horse to make a deep run, I should say. Sleeper was probably the wrong term there. And that division that they're in is tough, man. I mean, you got the Seahawks, you got the Rams, you got the Niners, and you got the Cardinals. Cardinals, I mean, they beat the Niners in week one. So they picked up DeAndre Hopkins. I already talked about him earlier. Kyler Murray looks like he's going to take a step forward in his progression as a player. And that division is deep. That division is tough. I mean, there's going to be no easy week within that division. So with this new playoff format, with 7 teams being able to make the playoffs, that division has a very good chance of all 4 of those teams making the playoffs. So we'll see how that plays out, though, and it'll be fun to watch. That's for sure. And then moving to Monday night, we had the Steelers versus the Giants. Big Ben was back after being a year off. He looked solid. I mean, he looked like Big Ben from 2 years ago. He was making good throws. He was patient in the pocket, and he was making the right plays. He looks healthy now. He slimmed down quite a bit in the offseason, which I think will help him, kind of make it through the season this year. And the Steelers look like they're clicking. Their defense obviously picked up right where they left off last year. They're solid. They look like a top 5 defense again. And if Big Ben can stay healthy, it doesn't matter the other pieces around around him. It doesn't matter if James Conner gets hurt. It doesn't matter if Juju Smith-Schuster gets hurt. Big Ben seems to be able to pick up the rest of the team and really carry that offense. So I think as long as he stays healthy, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be in good shape. And in the second game, we had the Titans, my Titans, versus the Denver Broncos. Now, if you just looked at the scoreboard, saw the final score 16-14, you probably would have been like, oh, that was a close game. In reality, the game shouldn't have been that close to begin with. Steven Gostkowski, the Titans' new kicker, he missed 3 field goals and an extra point in this game. So, the Titans drove the ball down at the end of the game. They were down 13-14, and I thought they were going to lose by 1 point. And man, that would have been something. But Gostkowski redeemed himself with the game-winning field goal, which was inevitably a chip shot. And he was able to redeem himself that way. I still think that, as a kicker in this league, that's the one position in this league that is a constant rotating door, a revolving door. Kickers are always being cut. Kickers are always being brought in. I mean, that game, 10 points were left on the board. That game should have been 26-14. Should not have been as close as it should have been. Titans outplayed them. The defense was better. The offense had struggles getting going at some times. They were able to make plays when they had to. Corey Davis looked good. A.J. Brown looked good. Derrick Henry couldn't get going. He ended up with 116 yards, but he did it on quite a few rushes. Doesn't surprise me, though, because last year against Denver, he was held to his worst game of the season. So that doesn't surprise me. Denver has a good defensive front to help stop him. But he was able to still get his yards. And, the fact that they only won by 2 on a game-winning field goal, that kind of irks me a little bit. Last year, they only made 8 field goals as a whole all season, which is the worst in the NFL. That's 1 field goal every other game, basically. So, if you don't have a kicker that can make a clutch field goal when your team needs it the most, it's not a good sign. Because the Titans are going to be in a lot of close games this year. They're going to be playing tight games. They're going to be, they're going to play the ground game. They're going to be playing tough defense. So they're going to be in a lot of low scoring, drag out fights of games this year. And they're going to need a kicker that they can rely on. Otherwise, it's going to be a long season for the Titans. And for Denver, Denver, they did look good at times during the game. Obviously, no Von Miller for the season. Or I guess I should say, I think they said 3 to 4 months as he was out. So we'll see if he comes back towards the end of the season. But he was out. Cortland Sutton, their main offensive weapon, was out. So that kind of affected the way their offense ran. I will say that the two newcomers, Jerry Jeudy, the rookie out of Alabama that they drafted, and Melvin Gordon, they both look good. I know Gordon had a fumble, but he was able to redeem himself with some big yardage in the second half. So Denver looks solid. It's just it was just a matter that I think the Titans outplayed him a little bit. Again, the score is not going to show it just because of the way the kicker missed 3 field goals and an extra point. But for most of the game, it felt like the Titans were the better team, with a few spots here and there where Denver, made some big plays. But week 1 overall was great. I mean, it was great to have football back. From a fantasy perspective, once again, fantasy is frustrating. For anybody who plays fantasy knows, is very frustrating. And I'm a believer in not blowing up my fantasy team until a few weeks into the season. But man, after week 1, it was hard. It's hard not to think about it. But I'll probably complain about fantasy football a lot throughout the season just because it's as frustrating as it is. I can't quit it. I can't quit fantasy football. I don't know why. I just keep coming back to it. I must be a glutton for pain or something. I don't know. But week 1 was great. I assume week 2, and the rest of the season is going to be great as well. Assuming that everything stays, per quota and the season continues throughout the season. So, it'll be fun to watch the season unfold. So, switching gears now, I want to switch over to the NBA playoffs. Obviously, with me not doing a podcast last week, we had a lot of things going on. We have the Lakers moving on to the conference finals. We had the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics start their conference finals on the East. And we had the Clippers and Nuggets go to a game 7. So, um, so let's start off with the Lakers. The Lakers, they were up 3-1 against the Rockets, and they just took care of business. They weren't messing around. They went out in game 5. They knew what they had to do. They knew they didn't want to extend the series because anytime you give a team life and any sort of momentum, it's not going to be good. I mean, they can build off of that momentum. We saw that with Denver. Uh, so the Lakers went out. They took care of business. The Rockets made a few runs here and there in game 5, but at the end of the day, LeBron James and AD and the rest of that team, clamped down and they closed that series out in 5. And they were able to get some extended rest and kind of sit and enjoy the other series in the Western Conference, which is the Clippers Nuggets. Clippers, again, a team that was up 3-1. Um, Nuggets, they were down 3-1 in this series and the series before. First series against Utah, they were able to come back, winning game 7. And lo and behold, they did the same thing here against the Clippers. They were down 16 and 19, I believe, in 2 of those games, in game 4 and game 5. Or sorry, game 5 and game 6. And they came back to win those. And then game 7, they just flat out dominated. I mean, the Clippers were up by 9 at one point, and then the Nuggets took the lead, and they never looked back. The second half was all Nuggets. And watching that game, the Clippers looked like they just rolled over. I mean, they didn't look like there was no player on the Clippers that looked like they wanted the ball. Kawhi obviously did, but he just having a bad night. Shooting defensively, he just wasn't himself. It was just an off night for Kawhi. And I think watching the bubble, the Clippers, they would turn it on when they could, when they wanted to, I should say, and they would take nights off, and that's just what it is. And this night, they just couldn't turn it on, like it wasn't there. And that's not discrediting anything that the Nuggets did, because the Nuggets played incredible. Jamal Murray with a 40-point game again. Jokic with a triple double in the third quarter. I mean, he's on his way to being one of the best centers to play this game. He's already one of the best passing centers that we had. I mean, just to give you an example, it was the fourth quarter of the game, and Jokic had his back to the basket, and he threw a no look behind the back pass to Jamal Murray, to a cutting Jamal Murray, like in the fourth quarter, like of a game 7. Who does that? I don't think many big men, I should say, can do that other than Jokic. I mean, he had his way. He was basically doing whatever he wanted to in that game, in game 7. Uh, Offensively, we know what we're going to get at Jokic. He's going to be a beast. He's going to be a pain to handle. Defensively is where he's a little bit of a liability, but that's kind of the whole Nuggets team. Defensively, they're not great. They do what they need to. Is offensively where they really shine, with Jokic and Murray and Michael Porter coming out this year, playing really well in the playoffs. So, the Nuggets against the Lakers is going to be a fun series. It'll be fun to watch you know, AD and Jokic go at it. I know Jokic is probably going to match up with like Dwight Howard or JaVale McGee, but it'll be fun to watch that. If I were the Lakers, I'd probably try to put AD on Jokic, just because AD is a great defensive player, one of the best defensive players in the league, and you're gonna need to find a way to slow Jokic down throughout the series. So that'll be fun to watch. On the flip side, on the Eastern Conference, we already had game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Heat and the Celtics. And man, what a game 1 it was. I mean, watching these two teams, I have no doubt in my mind that these are the 2 best teams in the East. I mean, they're deep, they're talented, they're gritty, they're going to do whatever they need to win games. And that's what it comes down to. I mean, those are the type of players type of mentality that you need to win in the playoffs. And game 1 was fantastic. I mean, it went to overtime. Jimmy Butler hit a 3 at the end of regulation to tie it up and send it to overtime. And then in overtime, it was back and forth, just like the regulation was. Both teams took shots. Both teams had leads. Jimmy Butler, huge bucket in an and one. I think it was like with 20-something seconds left to take the lead, to take I believe it was a 1-point lead. a 2-point lead. And then on the other end, Jason Tatum, he had a lane for a dunk uh, to tie the game up, and Bam Adebayo stuffed him. He blocked him, and it was probably one of the best blocks that I've ever seen in a playoff. You know, uh, and it was a hell of a play by Bam. Bam is probably, again, when we talk about best centers in the league right now, I think him and Jokic are probably the two of the best centers in the league right now. Some people put Embiid in there. Embiid's a little bit more inconsistent, but Bam is uh, Bam is awesome. I mean, the way he blocked that ball, if there was an angle where that ball, Tatum had the ball basically in the bucket, and Bam's wrist was bending backward to block it, and he denied him. And then, at the end of the game, Bam gets fouled. He makes 1 or 2 free throws, and then with 2.5 seconds left, they heave the ball down court. Jason Tatum falls, but gets up and still gets the 3-pointer off, and it rattles in and out. So, it was an awesome ending to an awesome game, and that series is going to be a lot of fun. From a betting standpoint, I'm probably going to stay away from it because I have no idea how it's going to play out. But man, that series is going to be fun to watch. And I think whoever comes out of there, both teams deserve to go to the final. So I think whoever comes out of there is deserving of getting to the NBA championship. So that'll be fun to see how that all plays out. So, obviously we had the NBA moving into their conference finals. We have the NHL. One team has already advanced to the NHL Stanley Cup Final, and we're waiting on the Eastern Conference Final to finish up. We have Dallas, beating the Golden Knights and making their first trip to the Stanley Cup Final since '98, I believe it was. I know past weeks on my podcast, I mentioned I really like the Golden Knights. I really like the Islanders. I thought they were two of the best teams in the bubble. And Dallas and Tampa are really ruining that that take for me right now. Dallas, they just play a gritty style game. They're gonna beat you on the one-on-one battles. They're gonna beat you in the battles on the boards. They're gonna grind out games, but not only can they play that style, but they're offensively gifted as well. They got guys like Radulov, Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin. They got guys that can really push the tempo and put pressure on opposing defenses. And I think that's kind of what pushed them over the edge against the Golden Knights. The Golden Knights, they were talented lines 1 through 4. But I think what they lacked was that grittiness that Dallas had. The willingness to play the dirty games and challenge those one-on-one battles and really make a push to win those one-on-one battles. And I think that's where Dallas had the edge in the series. And it showed. Obviously, they made the Cup Final, and now they're waiting the winner of the Eastern Conference Final against the Islanders and the Lightning. Lightning, I mean, they look amazing. I mean, they look like a team that are tired of always being the bridesmaid, never the bride, I believe is the saying. They've been the top seed so many times. They've made it to the Cup Final a few years ago against the Blackhawks. They are always a favorite to contend every year, and they just always fall short. I think this year it just seems like they're tired of hearing that, and they're really making a push back to the Cup Final. They're up 3-1 against the Islanders. Islanders won the game last night in double overtime, I believe it was. I'm not sure. I forget how many overtimes it went to, but the Islanders extended that series. Game 6 is going to be tomorrow night, Thursday night. So it'll be interesting to watch. I still think Islanders are a good team. I just think Tampa right now is the better team, and they're showing it. If I was a betting man, I'd probably bet that Tampa's going to close it out in Game 6. I don't think they're going to let this linger around much longer. I think from top to bottom, they're a little bit deeper than the Islanders from a skill position. Islanders, don't get me wrong, they definitely have 4 lines that they could put out there. But when you look at skill to skill from the third and fourth lines, I think Tampa's third and fourth lines are just a little bit better than the Islanders, and that's where the difference is right now. Um, they're able to make that push to to not only try to close out the series, but really enforce their talent and skill on the Islanders. So it'll be fun to see. I think regardless, either team that makes it out of the East, whether it's the Islanders or the Lightning, I think either of them against Dallas is going to be a good series. I'm not a Dallas fan. I hate Dallas actually as a Predators fan. But I think it'll be a fun series to watch either way. So it'll be fun to see. So we're gonna get into our gambling picks here in a little bit. I'm gonna take we'll take a quick break and then we'll come back and get into the gambling picks. All right, so let's get into our gambling picks for this week. Uh, as always, I track my bets through the Action Network. You can't place any bets on there, but they do allow you to track all bets. So I do my tracking through there. Um, Last week or 2 weeks ago, I should say, I went uh, 4-1 on my bets, so not too bad. I am still down on the entire season though with my fictional 500. I'm still down $179. Hoping to turn around this week though. I feel good about my bets this week. Little side note: I have been actually starting to bet um, real money using the FanDuel Sportsbook app. They've opened that up in the state of Illinois, so been playing around with there, had some luck, there. So hopefully that luck will translate to my actual picks here. So let's get right into it. So uh, as always, we're gonna do 5 picks with 500 fictional dollars, and we're gonna track it all season long. So first pick, I'm gonna start out with. I like the Cincinnati Bengals to cover the spread against the Cleveland Browns on Thursday Night Football. Right now, Cincinnati is a 6-point underdog. I liked what I saw from them in game one, in week one. I liked what I saw from Joe Burrow, more importantly. I think that team is talented. I think that team is going to be scrappy. Obviously, that team's not ready to win now, but they're going to be in a lot of games. They're going to keep games close just because of Joe Burrow and his winning attitude. They're going to keep a lot of games close. And I also don't like what I saw from Cleveland. I thought Cleveland played horribly. They're going to be playing this game on short rest. Um, it's going to be interesting to see how Baker Mayfield can bounce back after another loss. So I like Cincinnati to cover. I don't know if they're going to win the game, but I definitely think that it's going to be closer than 6 points. So I'm going to put $100 on Cincinnati +6 on Thursday Night Football against Cleveland. I also like 2 bets in the game 6 of Tampa Bay versus the Islanders tomorrow night. I like Tampa Bay outright on the money line to win outright. I'm going to put $100 on that. And I also like the under. The over under is set at 5 goals. I like the under on that. I'm going to put $100 on that. I think last couple of games, I should say, they definitely hit the under on there. I think games are going to be a little tighter in terms of how they're playing it. Both teams are going to be playing not to make any mistakes. So I think the under is a good bet there. So I'm going to put $100 on the under in the Tampa Bay Islanders game. And then moving over to Friday, game 1 of the Western Conference Final, I like Denver to cover the spread. They are a 6.5-point underdog. I think Denver has a lot of momentum going for them right now. I think they are playing at a high level. Jamal Murray's offense is ridiculous right now. Jokic is a beast at center. I don't think Lakers are going to have trouble finding a way to slow him down. I think like I said earlier, unless they put Anthony Davis, on Jokic, it's gonna be tough for them to slow it down. So Lakers have also had extended rest. They haven't played since last Saturday, so it's gonna be almost a week since they played. So I think Denver to cover that 6.5-point spread. I like that bet. I'll take Denver to cover. I'm gonna put $100 on that, and then moving on to Sunday, pick some NFL action. I like the Falcons to cover the spread against the Cowboys. Falcons are a 4.5-point underdog. Uh, Now both teams lost week one, but I liked what I saw out of the Falcons. That offense is gonna be in it every game. Their offense they're gonna be able to compete with any offense out there. I mean, that's just bottom line. Um, Dallas, you know, they have a solid defense. They have a solid offense. We'll see if they can put it together in a week two. Atlanta has a horrible defense. I think they're going to be able to score a lot more points, but I think Atlanta's going to be able to keep up with them. So I like Atlanta to cover that spread, that 4.5-point spread. So I'm gonna put $100 on that too. So pretty even bets all around. 5 bets, $100 each. Once again, I like Cincinnati to cover the 6-point spread against the Browns. I like 2 bets in the Lightning Islanders game. I like Tampa Bay outright to win, and I like the under at 5 goals. I like Denver to cover the 6.5-point spread against the Lakers on Friday. And I like Atlanta Falcons to cover the 4.5-point spread against the Cowboys on Sunday. So those are my bets for this week. We'll be back next week, Wednesday, as always. We're back to the one episode a week schedule for now. Every Wednesday. Be sure again to follow us on social media so you don't miss out on any updates on if the date on the episode changes or if we're skipping a week or anything like that. Follow on Twitter or Instagram at 5 for podcasting. You can also follow myself on Twitter at avpatel730. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, any thoughts, anything like that, you can also email the podcast directly. The email is 5forpodcasting@gmail.com. That's 5 spelled out, for podcasting@gmail.com. As always, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next Wednesday.